DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is eliminating your internal enemies. Before we get into this, I remind you all of two things. First of all, my text message number down below in the description. When we start sending out again, you'll be getting those straight to your phone. I'll talk about that more at a later date. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. You want to have me as your direct coach. People ask me, Dre, do you offer any type of coaching, masterminding, anything like that? Answer is yes. All that happens at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Just go to the link down below in the description, or just type in workonyourgameuniversity.com into your favorite browser, and you can learn more about that and take your next step. With that out the way, getting into the topic here today. Everyone's familiar with the external enemy. All right, even if you don't call it an external enemy, everybody understands what an external enemy is, even without that language. So an external enemy is the problems that are outside of you and outside of your circle that you know that you do have to deal with, and they know on some level that they have to deal with you. So an external enemy is like something that might be trying to hurt you in some way, and you might be trying to hurt it or them in some way, but you are aware that it or they exist, and they or it are aware that you exist. These are external enemies. You know about them. So, for example, think of if you're in a boxing match, you know that your opponent is, as soon as you get in the ring, you know your opponent is aiming to punch you in the face. And your opponent knows that you are aiming to punch them in the face. So neither of you is unaware that the other one is the opponent. You wouldn't walk up to your external enemy with your hands down, because you know that your external enemy would take advantage of that and punch you in the face. And same thing with them looking at you. So neither of you approaches the other one unguarded. You're never unguarded around your external enemies, because you understand what they might do to you, because you know that they're trying to hurt you and you know their intentions. So it's your internal team that could become your enemy. These are the people that you could walk up to expecting a hug, who can surprise you by instead doing what the enemy would do and punch you in the face, because you were unguarded and you were not on point when you approach them, because you didn't think you needed a reason to be, and they're the ones who will hurt you. And this is the internal enemy that we're going to talk about here today. And as I've said before, it's not the punch that hits the hardest that knocks you down. Is the one that you didn't see coming and knocks you down because you weren't able to brace for it. You were not ready for it. It was a sneak attack. Again, you're much more likely to get sneak attacked by your friend than you are likely to get sneak attacked by your enemy, because you're always on point watching out for your enemy. So if the enemy comes around, you can smell them. You see, you don't have that heightened awareness when it comes to your friends. So today's masterclass is about making sure that none of your internal team is planning to punch you in the face or shoot you in the back and just catch you unaware. All right. And it is your job to watch them and make sure that these internals are not plotting against you. What I'm going to share here today is not proof that anything internal is plotting against you, but it's just to make sure that you are aware of the internals and make sure they don't plot against you. That's the point. Point number one. Topic, once again, is eliminating your internal enemies. Number one internal enemy for every single person on the planet is your mindset. Your mind and the way you think is your number one internal enemy. The easiest and the hardest one, both at the same time, is your mindset. The good thing about mindset, as opposed to everything else we're going to talk about here today, is that you have full control over your mindset. You have control over the source inputs of your mind, i.e. what you are taking in and allowing your mind to be programmed by, and you have full control over the outputs of your mind. In other words, the thoughts that it produces. Even though it may not always feel like it, you do have control over it. You have full autonomy and 100% say over everything that occurs when it comes to your mindset. The problem with this is the same as the benefit. So the benefits and the challenges are exactly the same. You have full control. That's one of the problems, which means if you don't know how to properly set your mind, that's why it's called mindset, or you are unaware of how to get control over your subconscious, which controls the conscious thinking, then this full control actually becomes the worst problem you could have on your hands, because your lack of ability to control it makes it even more dangerous. It's like driving if you never drove a stick shift before, and then you get the car out on the road and start pressing on the gas pedal, but you have no idea how to control the vehicle. You're in more danger once the vehicle starts moving than if you just left it there and did nothing with it. It's the same thing when it comes to your mindset. All right? If you did nothing with it and you just sat it there and never tried or did anything in life, you'd be in less danger than if you go out into the world and start living, but not having control over your mind, because the outside world will then control your mind. It will program your mind, rather. You do have control, but you don't know how to control it. So the outside world exerts more control over your mind than you do. And this is how you end up feeling like mentally you're your own worst enemy, even though you should be your number one biggest ally. Any of you feel like this right now? Like your mind is working against you more than anything else? And I know this is true with a lot of people, because a lot of people don't understand how mindset works and how the subconscious works and how programming works. And if you don't know how they work, then of course they get used against you. This is how it works. So for many of you, this is the biggest problem in your life, is your mindset. Your control over your mindset, because you don't know how to steer the ship, is your biggest issue. And your mind is controlling you rather than you controlling it. So when your mind betrays you, it doesn't matter what's happening in the external world, even if everything in the external world is designed to work in your favor. If everything in the external is set up for you to be successful, but your mind is working against you, you will find a way to fail. Why? Because the mind is more powerful than any external factors. This is why we talked about a few episodes ago, contributing factors versus determining factors. Your mind will find a way to cause you to screw it up, and as we say, fumble the ball, simply because your mind is more powerful than any external force. Let's talk about some examples of your mind being your enemy. Procrastination is an example of your mind working against you. That's an internal enemy. What is procrastination? It is you putting off doing something that you should have done an hour ago. You're putting it off for another hour or another day or another week. That's your mind betraying you, because your mind knows that you need to do the thing. Instead of telling you, shut the hell up, stop whining, go do the thing, your mind instead says, well, let's put it off until later. See, your mind telling you to put it off until later, that's the procrastination, and that's an enemy. Why? Because you are not guaranteed future time. So every time you put something off until later that you could be doing today, you are gambling that you have more time in the future. And if you allow your mind to keep telling you that, you're going to keep gambling until the point that you lose. And you only have to lose that gamble one time to be forever wrong. That's why procrastination is an internal enemy. Self-doubt is another internal enemy. You're thinking about something that you could, would, or should do, but then you start coming up with all the reasons why you might fail. All right, doubting yourself. Usually when we doubt ourselves, we move more slowly. We are less definitive. We are less poised. We are less assertive in what we're doing. And we end up doing a lot less and achieving a lot less than we could had we been much more confident and self-assured in our behaviors. So second guessing is another form of internal betrayal. Second guessing, or I was just talking about self-doubt. Second guessing is when you have made a decision, or at least you think you've made a decision, but before you act on the decision, you say, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should do this instead. Instead of going to the left, maybe I should go to the right. Instead of going this way, maybe I should go that way. And every time you second guess, you're adding time to a situation. You're lessening the impact of your action, because every time you doubt an action and second guess an action, you lose a little bit of the power that comes with just thinking and acting, or not thinking at all and just relying on your instincts to take action. You can tell when someone's acting off instinct and they're just moving with no doubt. And another person, you can tell when they're second guessing and not quite sure of themselves. They can take the exact same action and get completely different results, because remember, human beings, other people, are reading your energy. They're not reading your words or even directly your actions. They're reading how you're saying the words and how you are taking the actions. And when you're second guessing yourself, the way that you do things shows through. The energy that in how you do things shows through when you're second guessing, as opposed to when you just act in a definitive and assertive way. Does everyone understand what I'm saying here? So thinking about all the terrible things that might happen to you if things don't go how you want or need them to go, this is a form of being your own internal enemy. And these are all thought habits that I call automatic negative thoughts. I talked about it in my book, Work on Your Game, how to address and eliminate those. Get the book at workonyourgamebook.com. So these are all things that when you allow yourself to emotionalize negativity in a way that paralyzes and slows your momentum, this and everything else that I've said here so far, these are all forms of being your own internal enemy. Now, there are positive uses of negative thoughts, but most people, being completely unaware of how to engage negative thoughts, in a positive way, only use negative thoughts in self-destructive ways. So of every aspect of your life, your mind can never and should never work against you in your desired outcomes. So if this is your current problem, then you should consider it an emergency in your life that you must address immediately. You must address it quickly. You get the Bulletproof Mindset 2.0 program inside of Work on Your Game University, and we'll help you with this immediately off the top. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is eliminating your internal enemies. Number 2, friends and family are forms of internal enemies. Now, this one sounds simple, but it can be tricky for some of you. For others, because you have experienced friends and family being enemies, it's not tricky for you at all, at least not anymore, now that you've had the experience. Your friends and family, these are the people who know you best. They have spent the most time around you at least amongst human beings, and you often trust them the most. These people can end up being your worst enemies in life because of these very reasons, because they spend a lot of time around you, they know a lot about you, and they see you all the time. They're very familiar with you, and you very familiar with them. So let's put it this way. If they end up positioned as enemies, they can be the worst enemies you can have simply because of the amount of intelligence that they have on you. So when I say intelligence, I don't mean that they're very smart. Some of your friends and family might actually be very stupid people. When I say intelligence, what I mean is knowledge about you, your background, your history, etc. That's what I mean when I use the word intelligence in this context. So you must be careful because of this about letting your friends and family too deeply into things that matter the most to you, because even though they're your friends, even though they're your family, if they can't help you achieve the thing or help you do anything about a certain thing, then maybe you should keep them in the dark on that subject so they stay out of your business and thusly out of your way. And they can't possibly become enemies because they don't have enough information to become an enemy. So make sure you don't trust people too deeply with things just because you have a history with them. That's not a good enough reason. So if someone is not there with an explicit mandate to help you better yourself and better your situation, then leave them out of the situation. Doesn't mean you can't still be friends with them. I mean, we talked about this. You got the 2-minute people, you got the 2-hour people, you got the 2-day people. And some people only get 2 minutes. Some people get 2 hours, some people get 2 days. That's completely okay. You don't have to give anybody 0 minutes. You can give everybody 2 minutes. 2 minutes is fine. So if they're not actively involved in helping you achieve an outcome, keep them out of your aims, keep them out of your goals, keep them out of your plans. As I tell you about any other human being, again, don't tell anybody about your goals, aims, and plans unless they are actively involved in helping you reach them. If they're not, then they don't need to know about it. They can stay on the outside looking in just like everybody else. And anyone who is not helping you reach your goal does not need to know that you have a goal, period. Again, I will continue saying this until everybody understands it. Anyone who's not actively involved in your business doesn't need to know about the inner workings of your business, regardless of how well the business is doing, whether you're doing terrible, whether you're doing poor. The more people you keep out of your business, the better. All right, this includes friends and family. As a matter of fact, keeping your friends and family out of your business might be one of the best decisions you ever make. Getting them involved can be one of the worst decisions you ever make, depending on who they are and who you are. Now, I will offer the caveat here that there are some people out there who actually do business with friends and family, and it works well for them. So for those of you who it's worked well for you, more power to you. I'm throwing you the bone to let you know that, yes, there are times where people and families work together and it ends up a good idea. And there are other times that people and families work together and it ends up being a terrible idea, or people employ their friends, ends up being a terrible idea. So you should know without thinking too deeply if a member of your family would be a good business partner for you. You don't have to do 10 years of due diligence. You already did 10 years of due diligence because you've known them for 20. So how much do you got to think about it? So if you had to think twice, the answer is no. You had to think twice, the answer is no. It's the same thing when it comes to friends. Do not do business with a person just because you have a relationship with that person. They are not the same thing. Someone who's good for business and someone who's good to be a friend are not the same thing. Sometimes they are both, and many times a business partner becomes a friend. It's not a friend becomes a business partner. Now, again, I'll offer the caveat. Sometimes friends work together and it works out great. But I've seen many more examples of people working together because they were friends and it ended up not working out too well. And many of you listening to this probably have examples of this from your own life. Friends and family can become the biggest problems in your life if you make the wrong decision and put them in a position where they are unqualified to be, should never have been in the first place. This is all based on you making a bad judgment call based on friendship rather than on business. If you want to use the word qualification, but that's a slippery term, but just someone's ability to perform. You should know who you're dealing with and whether they have the ability to perform or not before you put them in a position where they need to perform. Only way that would make any kind of sense is if you're hiring someone and you understand you're going to be training them from the ground up, or you got one of your kids working in your business and they don't know anything because they're 5 years old, but you're going to teach them how it's done. But you shouldn't be doing this with someone just because they're your friend or just because they're your family member. Again, it's hard to extricate yourself from that situation once you allow it. So this is why I'm trying to nip it in the bud from the beginning and let you know, don't let this happen, because it only leads to hurt feelings, people not getting invited to the Thanksgiving dinner, no invites to the weddings, et cetera, simply because you made the bad judgment call of putting someone who should never have been in a certain position into that position. I'm putting this all in your lap. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is eliminating your internal enemies. Number 3, when it comes to your internal enemies, are your business and professional associates. Some of these people can make themselves into internal enemies. People you are doing business with can become enemies of yours as well if relationships are not properly managed and properly controlled. And yes, I do mean controlled. How many of you, listen to me, have done business with a person, found yourself, and doing business doesn't mean that you two are necessarily equal. Maybe it was a customer. It could be anything like that where there's money being exchanged. And somehow, some way, you failed to set the proper parameters in that relationship and you ended up upset with that person, or they ended up upset with you, or you are mad at each other, and it just becomes this acrimonious situation simply because somebody did not do the job of laying down the clear parameters for how this thing was going to work. And the somebody is always going to be, when you're listening to my show, somebody's always going to be you, the person who's listening. It's always going to come back to you. Why? Because you have heard me say it, which means now you're responsible for it. So any business relationship you have with someone, even if you and that person are cool, you need to have a conversation and make sure that it's clearly hashed out. Here's what's working. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're not doing. Here's who does what. Here's how things get broken down. Here's how things get split up. It needs to be very clear so that there's no confusion. There's a lot of confusion out there amongst relationships. And this is the reason why relationships end up going bad, because it's not clearly laid out who's doing what, when, where, and why, or how. So you must properly manage and control relationships. And yes, when I say control, I mean control. You need to set the parameters on for how all your professional and business associations are working. Make sure you are immediately addressing anything that gets violated as far as your rules and parameters. It's when there are no parameters, no guardrails, no standards, no exceptions. That's when the shenanigans start, and they can turn into much worse than just mere shenanigans if no one gets a hold of the situation. And that no one is you. I'm putting the responsibility on you from the beginning so it doesn't become a situation, if you understand what I'm saying. If you take control from the beginning, then it can't get terrible. You're doing a business partnership with a person. Make sure you document who's doing what, how they're doing it, how either party can extricate themselves from the situation if necessary, i.e. break the partnership, etc. You can do this. As they say in the legal world, you do it for protection of both parties. All right, this is for protecting me, it's for protecting you. When you fail to do this, you will rue the day that you made this decision. All right, you're going to be angry at yourself for allowing this to happen. And again, I know enough people in business who have gotten into business relationships, didn't lay out clear parameters. The parameters that they thought existed in their own heads got violated, and now you got an acrimonious situation simply because you didn't do the work up front. You didn't do your homework. That's why I'm pointing this out. All right. Be very careful with your internal enemies, folks. Again, these are the messiest ones because they know you well. You have your guard down. You're not paying attention. Your antenna is not up. And these are the people who have the most access to you as well. So this is why you got to be very careful about the internal enemies. Let's recap today's class, which is eliminating these internal enemies. We know about the external ones. Those are the people that you already know are enemies and they know they're your enemy. What about the people who you think are your friend? They're the ones who can hurt you the worst. Number 1 is your mindset. All right, this is the one that can hurt you the worst because it has the most access to you, is always around, and knows every single thing about you, even the lies that you have told yourself and to others, and it will betray you the worst. It will be the worst enemy you ever had if you don't control it. Good thing about the mind is that you have 100% control over how it works, unlike with people. Number 2, friends and family. All right, this one sounds simple but can be tricky for some of you, and for others who've already made this mistake, it ain't tricky at all. You know exactly what I'm talking about. These are the people you got to be careful with simply because you have a long relationship with them. They know about your background, they know about your history, they knew about you before you were successful, they seen you unsuccessful. You got to be very careful with these people because if a relationship goes bad, they have more ammunition with which to hurt you than any other externality. We're not counting your mindset as an externality, any other externality that exists. They are internal because they know you already, but they're still external because they're not you. Be very careful with these folks. And number three, business and professional associates. They are the next level right underneath your friends and family. They know you pretty well too because they worked with you before. They've been around you. They've seen you come up in business. They have access to you and your guard maybe now when it comes to dealing with them. These are the people who can hurt you very badly. How many of you have ever had a business partner who was stealing from you? You found out. I mean, you ever had an employee stealing from you and you found out? And these are people who you thought you could trust. Again, if your enemy was stealing from you, you would notice it as soon as they took a dollar because you're watching your enemy. So you're not watching the people who are supposed to be your friends. That's why you got to watch out. That's why they're internal enemies and they know that they have that access. That's the reason why they take advantage. And again, I'm laying this at your feet and making it your responsibility to be vigilant and pay attention so it doesn't happen to you. All that said, folks, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Have me as your direct coach. Get access to all of our trainings and courses like people skills, 30 Days of Discipline, Content Machine, Bulletproof Mindset, and 30 more. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all